I wanted to put this video together for anyone that's thinking of doing the Jordan Trail. It's a beautiful trail, 650 kilometers in length. So a few years ago I did the second half of the trail. I'm going southbound, so starting in Dana and then basically doing a part of the trail that I think is most interesting and most exciting and most outdoorsy, which is cutting through the desert. We did the trail, it was myself and two other female adventurers. We did the trail in March. Springtime is a really good time to do the trail because it's not got too hot. Summer can be unbearably hot. And you also need to be careful in months like January and February when there's risk of flash flooding. We did the route entirely by ourselves. We did have a support to help with water drops. I'll talk a little bit more about that later because that wasn't entirely smooth and as smooth as we hoped it would be. And it was an incredible experience. The trail is really beautiful. So in terms of positives and things that I loved about the Jordan Trail, I would say if you're looking for real nature, being in places where you just feel like barely any people go, beautiful formations in the rocks in the desert, Jordan Trail really does tick a lot of boxes. We struggled a lot with the locals, to be honest, especially the Bedouins. I think they were trying to be quite kind and to look out for us, but we found it quite overbearing. And I think a lot of this just came to us down to us being an all-female group. And really the only other thing that I found quite frustrating was I was hoping for a lot more cheap street food en route. So being able to find like falafel stands and hummus and things like that. And we barely found anything. Most of the places we ended up eating were quite touristy and therefore quite expensive. So I just wanted to go through and answer some of the questions that I get asked most about the Jordan Trail. I am going to put a link below to a blog post that I wrote. It's a really big guide, really comprehensive with loads of information on things, including like a full kit list of stuff that I took. So the trail has been split into 35 sections. So in theory 35 days, but that doesn't account for rest days. As an average, you want to take a rest day once a week. That's just considered average if you're doing like a long distance hike. If you get tired, you might want to factor in a couple more days. So generally I'd recommend for the Jordan Trail giving yourself about 45 days. That's an easy one to answer. No, it's not. It's really not an easy trail to follow. I've also hiked on several trails, including the Israel National Trail, which is 1,000 kilometers in length, and I did the full trail. In comparison, the Israel National Trail has way markers the whole way, so 3 stripes, painted stripes which they put on rocks and on signs, so you can pretty much do the whole trail without even needing to look at a map. The Jordan Trail doesn't have any way markers. There are also no paper maps, which means that you're entirely reliant on having a GPS device. So we had a Garmin InReach Explorer, and on there we were able to download the trail, and you need that because you can find, you can be on a section where there are sort of trails that you can see that people have walked down, but you don't know which one is the one that you need to take. In our Garmin device, so we also used it as a backup emergency device, so you could press SOS if we needed help at any time. Our loved ones at home were able to follow our route and see all the squiggle lines of us getting lost, and see where the progress that we made each day, and we were also able to send them messages, so a really important bit of kit. I also got asked about terrain. So the terrain can be very varied. Sometimes you're just on the side of a road, it's not very pretty, but a lot of the time you're going over these wadis and up and down into valleys. It's really very, very cool. And there were also a couple of sections where there's sand. We almost entirely wild camped, which you'll need to do because there are stretches where you don't pass any villages and there's no options for hotels or anything like that. So you want to be completely self-contained and have all your camping gear with you. Really, you can kind of get away with camping anywhere, especially in the more remote parts of the desert. You want to make sure, the biggest thing is flash flooding is a real danger in the desert. So you want to make sure you're checking the weather forecast each day to make sure that there are no flash flooding warnings, and to make sure that you never camp in a valley. You've also got to think about not being below somewhere where there might be rockfall, and also there were a few nights where the winds really picked up. So that's another consideration. I did make a mistake, or we made a mistake one night of camping quite high, and we were on this exposed ridge. There were crazy winds and I ended up getting a tear in my tent, which was really frustrating. Thankfully it was only a couple of days before the end of the trail, so I ended up just bivvy bag camping. It's not at all. So during our hike, we only passed 2 other groups who were hiking the Jordan Trail. This took a little bit of planning, and I'm really glad that we decided to bring almost all our food with us. I'm vegan. At the time when I did the trail, I was on a vegetarian diet, which definitely made it a little bit more tricky, but the biggest problem was we could find a store and have some ideas of like meals that we might be able to cook on the trail, but actually their supplies would be really limited, or they would just have really random selection of food. So we basically almost entirely used expedition packs. So I'll include a link to the ones that we use below, and these are dehydrated meals that you just add boiling water to. If I was going to do the full trail, I'd actually be tempted to find a hotel at the halfway mark and box up some food and ship it way in advance, and ask them if they could store it ready for my arrival. And then for water, we paid for a guide to do, it was a bit of a nightmare. We paid for this guy who was meant to do these water drops, and this is really important because obviously you're in the desert, and you need to replenish water, so you do need support. I put his name and a link to all his details in the blog post that I've put in the comments below, sorry, in the description below. And it's really important that you make sure you don't use him, because he let us down in the middle of the desert and refused to come bring us water. The argument was over him trying to control where we were hiking, and he sent someone to follow us, and we were aware that we were being followed, and it was actually not a very nice experience. And it turned out that he had sent them because he didn't think we were capable of walking, being women on our own in the desert. But we managed to find someone else to step in and to help, so it was fine. But obviously quite, yeah, just not a very nice situation to be in really, and it made it quite stressful. I think there's 2 parts to this. So the first is it safe in terms of, you know, flash flooding, rockfall, getting lost, things like that. I would say, you know, this is quite a tough hike, and I would not recommend doing this hike unless you are an experienced hiker, you really know navigation well. This is not a trail for someone who's a complete beginner. Perhaps in the future, if they sort out proper waymarks and they mark like proper trails, then maybe. So if you fall into that category, I'd really recommend using a guide. I think the second part of the question is it safe in terms of the people? And yeah, obviously I've mentioned a little bit that we had not the best experience as a group of women, and that did cause a little bit of problems, and it was mostly just men that felt like it wasn't safe for us to be on our own, and they took it upon themselves to almost babysit us. And we had a lot of comments from guys like laughing at us and saying we're going to get lost and things like that, and often it was, you know, well-meaning, but it's also a little bit offensive. So there were some times when I felt like not safe and perhaps a little bit vulnerable as a group of women. But having said that, other than the people following us, there was never any specific instances where you know, where there was any real problems. So I wouldn't recommend doing this hike as a lone female. I think that would have been really difficult. It was hard enough in a group of 3. So that's kind of my review of the Jordan Trail, and I hope this gives you a little bit more of an idea of what the hike is like. Like I said, it's really beautiful, so if you feel you are confident enough and you do have the experience and the time to do it, I definitely recommend going for it. The Dana to Petra bit is the most famous section of the hike, and a lot of people hire a guide just to do that. But actually from Petra through to Wadi Rum, I actually thought that was, although it's really cool arriving in Petra, that was just like such an amazing moment, and getting there on foot. The section afterwards to Wadi Rum really stuck out in my mind as just, yeah, this mind-blowing scenery. So you've got some really beautiful things in store if you are going to make this trail happen. Please do let me know if you've got questions in the comments below. I'm really happy to help, or you can get in touch via my blog. Thank you for listening, and if you do go for the trail, good luck. I hope you have a really amazing time.